The bell above the pharmacy door chimed, and my stomach dropped before I even looked up. Margaret Carter's Louboutins clicked against the linoleum like bullets hitting their mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, each step bringing her closer to my counter, her Hermes scarf knotted tight around her neck like a noose of wealth and privilege. I'm Jenna, and until 30 seconds ago, I was having a perfectly normal Tuesday. "We need to discuss your little arrangement with my son," Margaret announced, her voice carrying across the empty pharmacy. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the counter, creating a rhythm that matched my quickening pulse. "Ryan and I are engaged, Margaret. It's hardly an arrangement." I kept my voice steady, continuing to count pills into their bottles. Years of practice had taught me that showing weakness around Margaret Carter was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. "Oh, darling," she laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. "That's precisely what we need to discuss. I've just learned some rather interesting information about your father's financial situation." My hands stilled over the prescription bottles. "My father's finances are none of your business. Everything in this town is my business." She reached into her designer handbag, pulling out a manila envelope. "Especially when it concerns my only son's future. Did you really think you could hide your father's bankruptcy from us?" The word hit me like a physical blow. Bankruptcy? That couldn't be right. Dad would have told me if things were that bad. "I see from your expression this is news to you." Margaret's smile widened, predatory and pleased. "How unfortunate. Well, here's what's going to happen. You're going to end things with Ryan, quietly and amicably. If you don't—" She tapped the envelope. "Let's just say there are certain details about your father's business practices that would interest the local papers." "You're blackmailing me?" "I prefer to think of it as protecting my family's interests." She slid the envelope across the counter. "You have 24 hours to make the right decision. And Jenna?" Her eyes locked onto mine, cold and calculating. "Don't test me on this. Your mother learned that lesson the hard way 25 years ago." She turned and walked away, leaving behind the envelope and the scent of expensive perfume. The bell chimed again, somehow more ominous than before. I stood there, fingers pressed against the envelope, my engagement ring catching the fluorescent light. The diamond Ryan had so proudly presented 3 months ago now felt like it was burning into my skin. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Dinner tonight? Mom's acting weird. We should talk." I looked at the envelope again, then at my phone. Margaret Carter had just declared war, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how far I would go to protect the people I love. I found my parents in their kitchen, the manila envelope burning a hole in my bag. Mom was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like childhood comfort, while Dad sat at the table, shoulders hunched over a stack of papers. The sight of those documents made my stomach clench. "Is it true?" The words came out harder than I intended. "Are we bankrupt?" Dad's pen stopped moving. Mom's spoon clattered against the pot. "Who told you?" Dad's voice was barely a whisper. "Margaret Carter paid me a visit today." I pulled out the envelope, letting it fall onto the table between us. She seemed quite informed about our family's finances. Mom's face went white. She gripped the counter, knuckles matching the pale ceramic tiles. "That woman never changes." "What do you mean?" I looked between them. "Mom?" "Linda, don't." Dad reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "No, David. She needs to know." Mom wiped her hands on her apron, a tremor in her movements. "Margaret Carter destroyed my life once before. I won't let her do it to you." The kitchen seemed to shrink as Mom told her story. 25 years ago, she'd been engaged to Richard Carter, Margaret's now husband. Margaret, threatened by Mom's relationship with her childhood friend, had orchestrated a scandal that forced them apart. Richard married Margaret instead, never knowing the truth. "She made sure everyone believed I was after Richard's money," Mom's voice cracked. "The rumors spread so fast. Even your father believed them at first." "Until I saw through Margaret's lies," Dad added softly. But by then, the damage was done. My phone buzzed again, another message from Ryan. I ignored it. And now she's using Dad's bankruptcy to break up my engagement? The pieces click together like a toxic puzzle. History repeating itself? The bankruptcy isn't final, Dad said quickly. We're in negotiations. If we can secure a new investor, which Margaret probably scared away, I finished. Just like she's trying to scare me away from Ryan. Mom's hands shook as she turned off the stove. Jenna, maybe you should consider... No, I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I won't let her win. Not this time. Careful, sweetheart, Dad warned. Margaret Carter has connections we can't fight. I thought of the way Margaret had smiled in the pharmacy, so sure of her power. Maybe that's been the problem all along. Nobody's ever really fought back. My phone lit up with Ryan's face, a third call. This time I answered. Hey! His voice was worried. Mom's acting strange. She keeps talking about wedding postponements and family reputation. What's going on? I looked at my mother, seeing the ghost of her younger self in her eyes. We need to talk, Ryan. There's something you should know about your mother. The time for running from Margaret Carter was over. Now it was time to run straight at her. The attic of my parents' house smelled like forgotten memories and dust. I'd been digging through boxes for hours, searching for anything that might help me understand the full scope of Margaret's vendetta. Mom's revelation about her past with Richard had sparked something, a suspicion that there was more to uncover. Behind a stack of old photo albums, I found a wooden box with a broken clasp. Inside, yellowed envelopes and newspaper clippings told a story Mom had never finished. I thought I'd find you up here. Ryan's voice made me jump. He stood in the attic doorway, his face half-shadowed. You missed our dinner. I can explain. The papers trembled in my hands. Can you? He stepped closer, picking up a newspaper clipping. Because Mom claims you're trying to destroy our family with lies about the past. Lies? I grabbed the clipping from him. Look at this, Ryan. Your mother didn't just break up my mom and your dad. She systematically destroyed 3 other engagements in town. All women she saw as threats. That was decades ago. Was it? I pulled out a more recent article. Claire Peterson, 2019. Remember her? Your college girlfriend who suddenly transferred schools? The article says her father's company faced unexpected audit problems right after you got serious with her. Ryan's face paled. That was just... a coincidence? Like the bankruptcy papers Margaret somehow knew about before my own father did? My fingers brushed something else in the box. A letter in Margaret's distinctive handwriting. As I read it, my blood turned to ice. What is it? Ryan asked. A letter to your father, dated 2 weeks before he married your mother. My voice shook. If you choose her over me, I'll make sure everyone knows about the missing hospital funds. Your career will be over before it begins. Linda may love you, but I can destroy you both. Ryan snatched the letter, reading it twice. This can't be real. It's your mother's signature, Ryan. She blackmailed your father into marriage. Stop. He crumpled the letter. Just stop. I can't. Because she's doing it again, to us. She's not just threatening my family's reputation. She's orchestrating our bankruptcy. I found records of calls between her and Dad's biggest investors. Ryan slumped against a dusty trunk. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. I knelt beside him. And because someone needs to stop her before she ruins another family. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Margaret's here. She knows about the box. Ryan and I locked eyes. In the distance, we heard the front door slam, followed by Margaret's voice, sharp with fury. Well, I said, gathering the evidence. Looks like she's saved us the trouble of confronting her. Ryan grabbed my arm. Jenna, wait. There's something else you need to know about my mother. She's not my real mother. Ryan's words hung in the attic air like suspended dust. Dad told me last year, when I got engaged to you. Margaret blackmailed him into keeping it secret all these years. The box of evidence slipped from my fingers, scattering papers across the floor. Below, Margaret's voice grew louder, demanding to see us. That's why she's so obsessed with social standing, Ryan continued, his voice hollow. She was Dad's secretary. When she got pregnant, she threatened to expose his affair with Mom, Your mom, unless he married her instead. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. So you're Linda Thompson's son. He met my eyes. Your half-brother. The attic door burst open. Margaret stood there, her perfect composure cracking at the edges. Behind her, my mother's face was ash-white. I see Richard couldn't keep his mouth shut after all, Margaret spat. Well, now you know. Are you happy, Jenna? You've torn apart 2 families instead of 1. I grabbed the crumpled letter from the floor. You did that yourself, 25 years ago. I did what I had to do to survive. Margaret's mask slipped, revealing something desperate underneath. You have no idea what it's like to come from nothing, to know one mistake could send you back there. So you made sure everyone else lost everything instead? My voice shook. The bankruptcies, the ruined engagements, all to protect your lie? Mom, Ryan's voice cracked on the word. How could you? Don't call me that. Margaret's eyes blazed. Not now. I raised you, I loved you. Isn't that enough? You loved what I represented, Ryan said. Your ticket to respectability. My mother stepped forward, reaching for Ryan, but he backed away from all of us. The engagement ring on my finger felt like it was burning through my skin. I'll destroy you all, Margaret whispered. 1 phone call and your father's company is finished. Richard's reputation, gone. Everything you love, turned to ash. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. You won't, because I'm not running away like the others did. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Choose carefully, Jenna. Margaret's smile was razor-sharp. Blood may be thicker than water, but scandal destroys everything it touches. Ryan looked between us. His biological mother, the woman who raised him, and me, his almost wife, now his sister. The weight of impossible choices filled the room. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Carter. Don't let her win. I have proof of everything. Meet me tonight. Sometimes, I realized, revenge isn't about destroying someone else. Sometimes it's about finally telling the truth, no matter how much it hurts. The Carter mansion loomed before me, its windows gleaming like predatory eyes in the twilight. Richard's text had led me here, but something felt wrong. The front door stood slightly ajar, spilling warm light onto the portico. Inside, voices drifted from Richard's study. I recognized Margaret's cultured tones, followed by Richard's deeper rumble. As I crept closer, their words became clear. You really think telling her everything will fix this? Margaret's laugh was brittle. Our son is devastated. Our son? Richard's voice cracked like a whip. You've spent 30 years pretending he's yours. The game is over, Margaret. I pressed against the wall, heart hammering. A drawer opened, papers rustled. The proof you promised Jenna, Margaret asked. Those adoption papers won't change anything. I'm still the only mother Ryan's ever known. Along with these, Richard's voice hardened. Bank statements showing how you've been systematically destroying David Thompson's business, threatening his investors, calling in loans early, all to force Jenna away from Ryan. My fingers curled into fists. The bankruptcy wasn't just revenge, it was calculated destruction. You'll destroy everything, Margaret whispered. Our reputation, our family. You did that yourself. A new voice, Ryan's, made me jump. He stepped out of the shadows behind me, his face carved from stone. Hello, Jenna. Dad invited me too. We entered the study together. Richard stood behind his desk, holding a thick folder. Margaret's perfect makeup couldn't hide her pallor. The charity gala, Richard said, handing me the folder. Tomorrow night. Every society member who matters will be there. The perfect stage for the truth. You wouldn't dare, Margaret hissed. I opened the folder. 3 decades of lies, manipulation, and destruction laid bare in black and white. My fingers trembled over the adoption papers. Proof of my connection to Ryan, proof of everything we'd lost. Actually, I said, I would. Then you'll destroy Ryan too. Margaret's smile was vicious. Every whisper, every rumor about his real mother, about your mother. Is revenge worth watching your brother suffer? Ryan's hand found mine, squeezing once, a gesture that said everything about what we'd been, what we could never be again. The gala starts at 8, I said, closing the folder. Your choice, Margaret. Resign from the board quietly, divorce Richard with dignity, or watch everything burn. You sound just like me, Margaret whispered, using people's secrets against them. Maybe we're not so different after all. The words hit like a physical blow. In my quest for justice, had I become what I hated most? Ryan's phone chimed, a message from my mother. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember who you're really fighting for. The line between justice and revenge had never felt thinner. The charity gala sparkled with wealth and pretense, a perfect stage for destruction. I clutched my champagne flute, watching Margaret work the room like the queen she pretended to be. The evidence folder sat heavy in my clutch, waiting for the perfect moment. Last chance to back out, Ryan murmured, appearing at my elbow. The tuxedo couldn't hide how tired he looked, how broken. Are you asking as my almost husband, or my brother? His wince made me regret the words immediately. Before he could respond, Margaret clinked her glass for attention. Time to begin her annual charity speech. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, resplendent in designer silk. Tonight we celebrate. Why don't we celebrate the truth? My voice carried across the ballroom. Conversations died, glasses stilled. About how you destroyed my mother's life. About how you blackmailed Richard Carter into marriage. About how you're not even Ryan's real mother. The silence turned deadly. Margaret's smile never wavered. Poor Jenna, she said softly, clearly struggling with her father's bankruptcy, making wild accusations. I have proof. I opened my clutch, reached for the folder, and found nothing. Margaret's smile widened. Looking for these? She pulled the documents from behind the podium. Amazing what a spare key and an hour's head start can accomplish. The room spun. She'd known. She'd been waiting. Shall I tell them what really happened? Margaret's voice turned silk sharp. About how Linda Thompson seduced a married man. About how she got pregnant and tried to trap him. About how she spent years poisoning her daughter against me. My mother stood up from her table. That's not... The hospital records are quite clear, Margaret continued. As is the restraining order Richard filed against Linda. Shall I read it? The whispers started. Judgmental eyes turned toward my mother, who seemed to shrink under their gaze. You forged those documents, I said, but my voice shook. Did I? Margaret's triumph blazed. Or did you just assume I was the villain because it was easier than facing the truth about your own family? Ryan stepped forward. Mom, stop. Not now, darling. She patted his cheek. The truth hurts, doesn't it? But sometimes we need to lance the wound to heal it. The room blurred. Everything I'd believed, everything I'd fought for, had it all been built on lies? Richard stood frozen by the bar, his face unreadable. My father wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. And my mother was crying. Well, Margaret raised her glass. Shall we return to our celebration? Unless anyone else has family secrets they'd like to share? I ran. Through the whispers, past the stairs, out into the cold night air. Behind me, I heard Ryan call my name, but I couldn't stop. I'd wanted revenge. Instead, I'd given Margaret exactly what she wanted. A perfect stage for her final act of destruction. The mansion's kitchen door creaked open at my touch. Inside, Margaret stood at the marble island, methodically burning documents one by one. The flames reflected in her eyes like trapped stars. I wondered who would come first, she said without looking up. The disgraced daughter or the betrayed son? Those aren't Richard's original documents you stole, are they? My voice was steadier than I felt. They're forgeries, just like everything else about you. She paused, a paper hovering over the flame. Does it matter? The damage is done. Your mother's reputation, your father's business, all destroyed. Just like you wanted to destroy me. Stop! Richard's voice cut through the darkness. He stepped out of the shadows, phone in hand. They're hearing everything, Margaret. The board, the police, everyone. Her hand trembled, the paper catching fire. You're recording me? We all are. Ryan emerged from the other doorway, his own phone raised. Behind him, my mother and father stood witness. Margaret's laugh turned hysterical. "So this is your revenge? Making me confess to my crimes?" "No." I moved closer. "This is me choosing to be nothing like you. The real documents are already with the authorities, the ones proving you forged evidence, committed fraud, and deliberately bankrupted innocent people." "You have no idea what it's like," she hissed, "clawing your way up from nothing, only to have people like your mother threaten everything you've built." "My mother threatened nothing," I said. "You did that yourself, with every lie, every manipulation, every person you destroyed to keep your secrets." "I gave Ryan everything." "You gave me a lifetime of lies," Ryan said quietly. "And now you've lost everything anyway." Sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret's face contorted and she lunged for the burning papers. In her desperation, she knocked over the flame, sending it skittering across spilled alcohol from her earlier drinks. Fire exploded across the marble counter. Margaret screamed, reaching for the evidence even as flames licked at her designer sleeve. I moved without thinking, tackling her away from the inferno. We hit the floor hard as Richard and Ryan grabbed fire extinguishers. "Why?" Margaret whispered as we lay there, smoke swirling around us. "Why save me after everything?" "Because revenge destroys everyone it touches." I helped her sit up as emergency lights flashed outside. And I choose to be better than that. The kitchen door burst open, uniformed officers flooding in. As they led Margaret away, she looked back once, her perfect facade finally cracking to reveal something almost human underneath. Ryan touched my shoulder. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be. We all will be." Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemy, but in refusing to become them. The envelope arrived on a quiet Tuesday, just like the day Margaret first walked into my pharmacy. Her precise handwriting hadn't changed, even if everything else had. I found Ryan in our garden, pulling weeds from around Mom's transplanted roses. The sight still struck me sometimes, how we'd rebuilt our relationship from the ashes of what we'd almost been. "She's requesting visitors," I said, holding up the letter. "First time since the sentencing." Ryan's hands stilled in the dirt. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about choices, about how revenge and forgiveness both change you." The kitchen door opened, and Mom stepped out with a tray of lemonade. She'd started wearing bright colors again, letting her hair go naturally gray. Dad followed with Richard, discussing plans for their newly merged business venture. "Margaret's letter?" Mom asked, seeing the envelope. I nodded. "She says she's different now. That prison showed her what it's like to lose everything, just like she did to others." "People like her don't change," Dad started, but Richard held up his hand. "Maybe they do," he said quietly. "Maybe they just need someone to show them how." Ryan stood, brushing dirt from his knees. We could go together, not as the people she hurt, but as the people who refused to let her destroy us. The roses caught the sunlight, their petals still damp from morning dew. Mom had planted them the day after Margaret's sentencing, not as a celebration of victory, but as a reminder that beautiful things could grow from painful soil. "I'll drive," I decided. "But first, there's something I need to do." At the pharmacy, I pulled out Margaret's original threat letter from my desk. The paper had yellowed slightly, its words less powerful than they'd once seemed. I added it to a small box with the other remnants of our shared past. Photos, documents, the evidence that had finally brought truth to light. The box fit perfectly in the garden, beneath the roses. Ryan helped me dig the hole, our hands working together in the earth our mothers had once fought over. "Not quite forgiveness," I said as we covered it. "Not quite revenge either," he replied. "Maybe something in between." Mom brought over one last rose to plant, a white one, its thorns sharp, but its petals soft with promise. As we worked, I thought about Margaret sitting in her cell, writing letters to the family she'd tried to destroy, and the son she'd loved in her own broken way. Some wounds never fully heal. Some stories don't end with perfect closure. But sometimes, in the space between justice and mercy, we find something stronger than revenge, the power to choose who we become. The rose took root, reaching toward tomorrow's light.
The rain pounded against the windows of Chen Industries' executive conference room, matching my dark mood perfectly. Across the massive glass table, my mother-in-law Victoria Chen sat like a queen on her throne, flanked by my sister-in-law Rebecca and my brother-in-law Michael. The same three people who'd spent the last 5 years trying to erase every trace of my existence from the company my late husband James and I had built together. "Sign the papers, Sarah," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It's time to move on. James has been gone for 5 years. You need to accept that you're not part of this family anymore." I stared at the buyout agreement before me, a mere $2 million for my 25% stake in a company worth billions. The same company where I'd work 80-hour weeks alongside James, developing our revolutionary medical devices that had changed countless lives. $2 million is more than generous, Rebecca added, adjusting her Cartier bracelet with a smirk. "Considering you came into this family with nothing." The words stung, but they weren't new. I'd heard variations of them ever since I met James in graduate school, where we were both studying biomedical engineering. To his family, I was never good enough, just a scholarship student from a middle-class background who'd trapped their golden boy. They never knew about the nights James and I spent in our tiny apartment developing prototypes for our first medical device. How we'd sold my car to fund our initial patent application. How we'd pitched to dozens of investors before finally getting our break. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes, Michael said, checking his Rolex. "Sign now, and we can announce the consolidation of ownership. Unless you want us to reveal how you've been emotionally unstable since James's death." My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the pen. Since James's fatal car accident 5 years ago, they'd systematically pushed me out, first from my position as head of research and development, then from the board, using their combined shares to outvote me at every turn. I fought back at first, but they'd made my life hell, spreading rumors about my mental health, suggesting I'd married James for money, even implying I'd had something to do with his accident. Now they were threatening to use my grief counseling sessions against me if I didn't sell. 30 seconds, Sarah," Victoria warned. "Sign, or we'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you really are." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't sign anything. Trust me. I need to use the bathroom," I said suddenly, standing up. "Sit down," Victoria snapped. "Sign first." "It's either the bathroom now, or I throw up on your buyout agreement," I replied calmly. "Your choice." Rebecca wrinkled her nose in disgust. "Let her go, she's just stalling." In the elegant bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to think. The text message had to be a mistake. No one was coming to help me. I was alone, just as I'd been since James died. I touched the small gold locket around my neck, James' last gift to me. Inside was a tiny key, though I'd never figured out what it opened. "For the future," he'd said with that mysterious smile of his, just days before the accident. A soft knock at the door startled me. "Mrs. Chen." I opened it to find a tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked black hair. She looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place her. "I'm Linda Wang," she said quietly, "and I believe we need to talk before you make a huge mistake." My heart stopped. Linda Wang, CEO of Wang Enterprises, one of the largest medical technology companies in Asia. But what was she doing here? "I don't understand," I whispered. She smiled, reminding me suddenly of James. 5 years ago, my daughter Maria was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. The doctors said she wouldn't survive. Then they tried a new device, one you and James developed. She's now in medical school herself. I remembered. It was one of our first successful cases, though I'd never known the patient's identity. "What you don't know," Linda continued, "is that James reached out to me before his death. He was worried about his family's intentions. He left something in my safekeeping, something meant for you when the time was right." From her briefcase, she withdrew a folder. "I've spent 5 years watching them try to destroy you, waiting for the right moment. They're making their move today, aren't they?" I nodded numbly. "Then it's time." She handed me the folder. "Everything you need is in here, including what that key around your neck opens." My fingers trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were documents, emails, and a letter in James's handwriting that made my blood run cold. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Linda said softly. "Are you ready to take back what's yours?" I touched the locket, feeling the key inside. After 5 years of darkness, I finally saw light. Yes, I whispered. I'm ready. Walking back into the conference room, I felt different. Stronger. Victoria, Rebecca, and Michael looked up expectantly, the buyout agreement still waiting. Ready to sign? Victoria asked smugly. I smiled, channeling James's quiet confidence. Actually, I think it's time for the board meeting, and I have a few surprises of my own to share. What are you talking about? Michael demanded. You'll see, I said, heading for the boardroom. You'll all see. As I walked out, I heard Linda Wong on the phone. Everything's in place. Send them in. For the first time in 5 years, I felt James's presence, not in grief, but in strength. The real story was just beginning. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, Linda Wong at my side. The usual board members were there, all carefully chosen by Victoria over the years to support her agenda. But today there were new faces too, ones that made Victoria's perfectly maintained composure slip. What is Wong Enterprises doing here? She demanded, seeing Linda's executives filing in. This is a private board meeting. Actually, Linda smiled, taking a seat. As of this morning, Wong Enterprises owns 15% of Chen Industries shares. We have every right to be here. Victoria's face paled. That's impossible. Those shares weren't for sale. They were James's personal shares, I said quietly, held in a secret trust that matured today, exactly 5 years after his death. Opening the folder Linda had given me, I began laying out documents on the polished boardroom table. But that's just the beginning. James left quite a paper trail before he died. Shall we discuss the falsified research data you submitted to the FDA, Michael? My brother-in-law's face went white. You can't prove anything. James could, and did. I pulled out more papers. Or maybe we should talk about the offshore accounts where you've been hiding company profits, Rebecca. The ones you've been using to fund your secret gambling addiction. Rebecca's Cartier bracelet clattered against the table as her hand began to shake. You're making wild accusations, Victoria cut in sharply. No one will believe. They'll believe this, Linda interrupted, nodding to her assistant who started a video on the boardroom screen. There was James, looking healthy and vibrant, recorded just weeks before his death. If you're watching this, he began, then everything I feared has happened. My family has tried to force Sarah out just as they tried to force me to divorce her years ago. I gasped. This was news to me. What you don't know of Sarah, James continued, is that they threatened to destroy our medical research if I didn't leave you. They never forgave me for choosing love over their twisted version of family loyalty. So I started gathering evidence, preparing for the worst. The video continued, showing detailed documentation of years of corruption, fraud, and manipulation. James had recorded conversations, kept emails, tracked money transfers, building an ironclad case against his own family. The key in your locket, he said finally, opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Everything is there, all the original documents, plus my personal shares in the company, transferred to a trust that would mature in 5 years. I knew they'd try to break you immediately after my death, but I also knew you were strong enough to survive until this day came. Tears rolled down my cheeks as his image smiled sadly. I'm so sorry for leaving you to face them alone, my love. But you were never truly alone. Linda has been watching over you, waiting for the right moment. And now it's time for the truth to come out. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, I stood up, pulling out one final document. This is a detailed report of every illegal action taken by Victoria, Michael, and Rebecca Chen over the past decade. If you don't immediately resign from all positions and transfer your shares back to the company at market value, this goes to the SEC, FBI, and every major news outlet tomorrow morning. You wouldn't dare, Victoria whispered. You'll destroy the company's reputation. No, Linda interrupted. Wong Enterprises is prepared to buy all surrendered shares, ensuring stability. The only reputations being destroyed will be yours. You planned this all along, Rebecca accused. You and James. No, I said firmly. James planned this to protect what we built together. To protect our legacy of helping people, not just making money. He knew what you were, even if I didn't want to see it. Over the next hour, papers were signed. Resignations tendered. By sunset, Victoria, Michael, and Rebecca Chen had been escorted from the building, their corporate access revoked. What happens now? One of the board members asked nervously. I smiled, feeling truly peaceful for the first time in 5 years. Now we get back to what this company was meant to be. In the months that followed, Chen Industries transformed. We refocused on research and development, launched new medical devices, and established a foundation to help patients who couldn't afford treatment. Linda Wang became a mentor and friend, helping me navigate the challenges of leadership. The day we announced our new breakthrough, a revolutionary treatment that would save thousands of lives, I visited James's grave. "We did it," I whispered, touching the headstone. "Everything we dreamed about." A soft voice behind me said, "He would be so proud." I turned to see Maria Wang, Linda's daughter, now a bright-eyed medical student. "I start my residency next month," she said shyly. "I want to help people like your device helped me." Looking at her, I saw the future James and I had envisioned, one where business served humanity, not greed, where innovation meant saving lives, not just making money. "Would you like to intern in our R&D department?" I asked impulsively. We could always use fresh perspectives. Her face lit up. "Really? I'd love to." That evening, sitting in what had once been James' office, our office, I opened the locket and looked at the tiny key that had changed everything. It had unlocked more than just a safe deposit box. It had unlocked the truth, justice, and a future filled with purpose. Victoria and her children had disappeared to Europe, their reputation in tatters. But I felt no triumph in their downfall. Instead, I felt gratitude for James's foresight, for Linda's patience, for the chance to make a difference. On my desk sat a framed photo of James and me in our first tiny lab, young and full of dreams. Next to it stood a new photo, me with our R&D team, including Maria, all wearing lab coats and bright smiles. The intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Chen, the new patient trial results are in." I touched the locket one last time, then stood up, ready to face whatever came next. James had given me more than just evidence against his family. He'd given me the strength to carry on our dream. And that was the greatest revenge of all. Being adopted was never a secret in our family. My sister Emma made sure of that. Every chance she got, she'd remind me that I wasn't real family, that Dad had only taken me in because my birth parents died in a car crash when I was 2. "Remember Lily," she'd say at family gatherings, her perfect smile never reaching her eyes. "You're here because of charity, Daddy's good heart." For 15 years, I endured it, watched as Emma got the best of everything. Private school, expensive cars, unlimited shopping sprees. Meanwhile, Dad insisted I work part-time jobs, learn the value of money, live modestly. Emma called it proof that I wasn't really loved. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. Dad owned Wilson Enterprises, a mid-sized investment firm, as far as anyone knew. Emma strutted around town as the heir apparent, already working as vice president at age 28. I chose a different path, working at a small nonprofit helping underprivileged kids, something Emma mockingly called staying in my lane. Everything changed 3 months ago when Dad was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him weeks. Emma immediately took charge, barely letting me visit him in the hospital. Family only during these precious moments, she'd say sweetly to the nurses, emphasizing the word family while shooting me meaningful looks. But Dad insisted on seeing me alone one afternoon. Emma was furious, but she couldn't refuse him. Not when he was so weak. "Lily," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I need you to know something." He pressed a small key into my hand. "After I'm gone, go to First National Bank, Box 2247. Everything will make sense." "Dad, what?" I started, but Emma burst in, claiming Dad needed rest. That was the last time I spoke to him. He passed away 2 days later. The funeral was exactly as Emma wanted. Grand, expensive, showy. She gave a tearful eulogy about being Daddy's only real daughter and how she'd honor his legacy. I sat quietly in the back, the small key burning a hole in my pocket. Then came the will reading. Emma arrived at the lawyer's office in designer clothes, practically glowing with anticipation. Her husband James, a senior manager at Wilson Enterprises, looked equally confident. Various board members and executives filled the room, all expecting Emma to take control. Mr. Harrison, Dad's lawyer for 30 years, cleared his throat. "Before we begin, Mr. Wilson left a video to be played." Emma straightened in her chair. Daddy always had a flair for dramatics, she laughed. Others chuckled sycophantically. The screen lit up, and Dad appeared, recorded just weeks before his death. If you're watching this, I'm gone, he began. And it's time for the truth to come out. He paused, taking a deep breath. Wilson Enterprises is just the tip of the iceberg. For 30 years, I've built an empire in secret. 15 companies, all operating independently, worth a combined $4.2 billion. The room erupted in gasps. Emma's smile froze. Emma, Dad continued, you've spent your life believing you were entitled to everything. You bullied your sister, thinking being my biological daughter made you special. His voice hardened. You were wrong. Emma's face went pale. Lily, Dad's eyes seemed to find me through the screen. That key I gave you. It opens a safety deposit box containing everything. All the documentation, all the companies, everything. While Emma played executive at Wilson Enterprises, you were learning real lessons: humility, hard work, compassion. That's why you, my beloved adopted daughter, are the sole heir to everything. The room exploded into chaos. Emma leaped to her feet, screaming, "This isn't possible." But Dad wasn't finished. Wilson Enterprises was a test, Emma, one you failed spectacularly. Your treatment of employees, your arrogance, your cruelty to your sister, I saw it all. The real empire requires a different kind of leader. Mr. Harrison paused the video and pulled out a thick folder. The official documents naming Lally Wilson as CEO and sole owner of all 15 companies, including Wilson Enterprises. Emma lunged for the papers, but security stepped forward. I hadn't even noticed them entering the room. This isn't over, she shrieked. I'm his real daughter, his blood. Blood doesn't make a family, I said quietly, standing up. Dad taught me that. Not through words, but through lessons you never bothered to learn. I pulled out the key Dad had given me. Shall we see what's in that safety deposit box, Mr. Harrison? Emma's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. I've run Wilson Enterprises for years. The board won't be supporting you, James suddenly spoke up, looking at his phone. The stock price just jumped 30% on news of the leadership change. The market has spoken. Emma turned to him in shock. James. But he was already walking toward me, hand extended. Ms. Wilson, I look forward to working under your leadership. As Emma collapsed into her chair, mascara running down her face, I felt no joy, only a deep understanding of why Dad had arranged everything this way. But this was just the beginning. The contents of Dad's safety deposit box changed everything. Inside, we found meticulously organized files detailing all 15 companies, tech startups, real estate developments, renewable energy projects, and more. Each folder contained not just legal documents, but personal notes from Dad explaining why he'd chosen me to lead them. While Emma played office politics, one note read, I watched you volunteer at homeless shelters. When she demanded a new car, you took the bus to save money for college. You have the heart this empire needs. But the biggest surprise wasn't the companies, it was the video. Hello, Lily. Dad's face appeared on Mr. Harrison's laptop. If you're watching this, you've already learned about your inheritance. But there's more. He smiled, his eyes twinkling. Remember all those part-time jobs I made you work? The internships at small companies? Those weren't random. Each one was a subsidiary of our empire. Your supervisors have been reporting to me for years about your kindness, your work ethic, your leadership. My mind raced, remembering all those jobs. The summer I spent at a tech startup. The year at a renewable energy company. The nonprofit work. Even your current job, Dad continued. The nonprofit? It's part of our charitable foundation. You've been running a multi-million-dollar operation without even knowing it. Your programs have helped thousands. Emma's scream from the hallway interrupted the video. She was being escorted out by security, still protesting that blood mattered more than anything else. Over the next few weeks, the truth about Dad's empire unfolded. Each company was more impressive than the last, all operating under different names to avoid drawing attention. But most surprising were the people. Sarah from my first summer job was actually a Harvard MBA who'd been assessing my management skills. Mike, the janitor I'd always chatted with at the nonprofit, turned out to be a senior strategist evaluating my character. Everyone had been watching, reporting back to Dad. Emma didn't take her disinheritance quietly. She hired lawyers, claiming mental incompetence, undue influence, anything she could think of. But Dad had prepared for that too. Your sister will fight, his next video predicted, so I've arranged something special. That something special was revealed at the emergency board meeting Emma demanded. She arrived with an army of lawyers, confident she'd win over the board with her experience. Instead, she found the room filled with faces she didn't recognize. "Allow me to introduce the real board," Mr. Harrison announced. "Representatives from all 15 companies who've been watching both of you for years." One by one, they stood and shared their observations. Ms. Emma Wilson routinely belittled employees. Ms. Lily Wilson stayed late to help junior staff. Emma fired people for minor mistakes. Lily created mentorship programs. Emma's face grew paler with each statement. Her lawyers shifted uncomfortably. Then came the final blow. "Your father," Mr. Harrison announced, "left one last condition in his will. Any legal challenge to Lily's leadership triggers an immediate clause. All of Emma's shares in Wilson Enterprises, the 2% she actually owns, will be donated to the charitable foundation Lily runs." Emma's lawyers quickly ushered her out. Her husband James stayed behind. "I knew," he admitted quietly. "Your father told me years ago. It was my job to watch Emma, to give her chances to change. She never did." The next few months were intense. I moved between all 15 companies, learning operations, meeting employees, understanding Dad's vision. To everyone's surprise, except maybe Dad's, I took to it naturally. All those years of diverse work experience had prepared me perfectly. Emma tried one last desperate move. She called a press conference, planning to reveal everything and paint herself as the victim. Instead, she found herself facing reporters who'd been given full documentation of her years of mismanagement and employee abuse. In fact, one reporter asked, "Isn't it true that Wilson Enterprises stock has risen 45% since your sister took over?" The cameras caught her storming out. 6 months after Dad's passing, I stood in my office, his old office, looking at a photo of us from my college graduation. Emma had refused to attend, claiming she was too busy. Dad had beamed with pride anyway. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Emma, looking different, tired, subdued. "The charitable foundation," she said quietly. "I heard they're helping people learn business skills. People who need second chances." I nodded, understanding what she wasn't quite asking. "Class starts Monday at 9, I replied. "Don't be late." She turned to leave, then paused. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so softly I almost missed it. "For everything." "I know," I answered. "Dad knew you had it in you too. That's why he arranged all this." After she left, I opened Dad's last letter, the one marked "Open when Emma apologizes." "My dear Lily," it read, "if you're reading this, the real work begins. Leading companies is important, but leading people back to their better selves, that's the true legacy I wanted to leave. Take care of your sister. Take care of our people. And remember, I chose you not because she failed, but because you succeeded at being human first and a businesswoman second. Today, the empire runs smoothly. Emma started at entry level in the foundation, finally learning the lessons Dad tried to teach us both. The nonprofits programs have expanded to 50 cities. And that photo from graduation? It sits on my desk, next to a newer one. Emma and me at the foundation's first graduation ceremony, both of us smiling. Real smiles this time. Dad built an empire in secret, but his greatest achievement wasn't the money or the companies. It was teaching 2 daughters, one by blood, one by choice, that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in how you treat others. Sometimes at night, I walk through the empty office, remembering the little girl who thought she wasn't real family. Dad knew better. He knew that family isn't about blood. It's about love, learning, and sometimes learning to love again. Emma's office at the foundation isn't as grand as her old one. But last week, I saw her stay late to help a struggling student with their business plan. When she caught me watching, she smiled, a real smile, like when we were kids, before money and status poisoned everything. That's when I knew Dad's plan had worked perfectly. He hadn't just left me an empire. He'd given Emma a chance to find her soul. And in the end, that was worth more than all 15 companies combined. The contractions started right after she threw my last bag onto the driveway. "Please," I begged, one hand on my swollen belly. "Jack, don't do this. I'm due in 3 weeks." But my husband just stood there, arms crossed, as his mother continued screaming from the doorway. Gold digger, you thought you could trap my son with a baby? Get off my property before I call the police. 8 months pregnant, and I was being thrown out of my home because my mother-in-law, Margaret, convinced her precious son that I'd gotten pregnant to steal their family fortune, a moderately successful local restaurant chain. The truth was, I'd never wanted their money. I'd fallen in love with Jack when we were both waiters at their flagship restaurant. Back then, he was different, kind, loving, ambitious. But the moment we got married, everything changed. He moved us into his mother's mansion, quit his job to manage the family business, and slowly turned into his mother's puppet. The baby isn't even his. Margaret's voice cut through the rain. I saw those text messages on your phone. My heart stopped. The texts she found were from my twin brother, Tommy, who'd been helping me plan Jack's surprise birthday party. But Margaret had conveniently deleted the earlier messages that would have explained that. Jack, please, I tried one last time. Those messages were from my brother. You've met him, you know. Save your lies, he spat. Mom showed me everything. You've been planning to take our money from the start. Well, guess what? The prenup means you get nothing. Good luck raising your bastard child alone. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the pouring rain. At that moment, another contraction hit, stronger this time. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, but it was dead. Of course it was. Margaret had probably planned this whole thing, waiting until I was vulnerable. Thankfully, Mrs. Chen from next door had witnessed everything. She rushed out with an umbrella, helped me into her car, and drove me straight to the hospital. Those people are devils, she muttered in Mandarin, which she'd been teaching me. But karma, it always comes back. I didn't know it then, but Mrs. Chen's words would prove prophetic. The baby came that night, a beautiful little girl named Sophie. When the nurse asked about calling my husband, I shook my head. There's no husband anymore. But I wasn't alone. My twin brother Tommy flew in from Silicon Valley the moment he heard, and he brought someone unexpected. His boss, the legendary tech investor Diana Chen. Mrs. Chen next door is my aunt, Diana explained, sitting beside my hospital bed while Sophie slept peacefully in her bassinet. She told me everything. And she also mentioned you're a brilliant software engineer working as a waitress. I blushed. It was true. I had a master's in computer science, but jobs were scarce in our small town. And then I'd fallen in love with Jack. Show me your work, Diana said simply, pulling out a laptop. With Sophie sleeping soundly and Tommy keeping watch, I showed Diana the project I'd been coding in secret during my pregnancy, an AI-driven restaurant management system that could revolutionize the industry. The irony wasn't lost on me. I created it hoping to help Jack's family business. Diana's eyes widened as she reviewed my code. This is exceptional. Why isn't this on the market? Margaret said technology would ruin their traditional family business. I replied bitterly. She convinced Jack to shut down my project. Diana's smile reminded me of a shark. Well, their loss is about to become our gain. How would you like to come work for me in Silicon Valley? Full benefits, on-site daycare, and I'll personally mentor you. I looked at my newborn daughter, then at the papers Tommy had already prepared, divorce filings, custody agreements, restraining orders against Margaret. A new life was waiting for us. When do we start? 5 years passed in a blur of coding, pitching, and building. Sophie grew from a tiny baby into a brilliant little girl who loved computers as much as I did. My restaurant management system, now called ServeSmart, exploded into a $100 million company. Forbes called me the woman revolutionizing restaurant tech. Diana became like a second mother, teaching me not just about business, but about standing up for myself. I thought I'd left my old life behind completely, until the day my assistant rushed into my office. Ma'am, you need to see this. She pulled up a video on my computer. It was Margaret standing in front of my old home, which was now being sold for unpaid taxes. She was sobbing to a local news reporter. My son's restaurant chain is bankrupt because of these big tech companies. That ServeSmart system destroyed our traditional business. And now I find out. She looked directly into the camera, and I could see the moment recognition hit her. Sarah, if you're watching this, we were wrong. So wrong. Please, we need your help. I sat back in my chair, touching the jade pendant Mrs. Chen had given me years ago. Everything comes back around, she'd said. And now, watching Margaret beg on national television, I smiled. because she had no idea what was coming next. I watched the news clip 3 more times, studying Margaret's tearful performance. My ex-mother-in-law had always been an excellent manipulator, but this time, her desperation was real. "What do you want to do?" Diana asked from her usual perch on my office couch. Over the years, she'd become more than a mentor. She was the mother figure I'd always needed. "I want to know everything," I replied. Within hours, my team had compiled a complete report. The truth was even better than I'd imagined. After ServSmart revolutionized restaurant management, Jack and Margaret's chain had refused to adapt. Their traditional methods, meaning Margaret's controlling micromanagement, had driven away customers and staff alike. They'd taken out massive loans to stay afloat, using their mansion as collateral. But here was the delicious part. Their biggest creditor was Chen International Holdings, Diana's company. "You knew?" I asked her. Diana's smile was pure mischief. "I've been buying their debt for years, waiting for the right moment. The house, the restaurants, everything, it's all yours if you want it." I looked at the photo on my desk. Sophie at her 5th birthday party last week, blowing out candles on a cake she coded herself using my interactive baking program. She had my brains and determination, but she'd inherited Jack's dark hair and eyes. Not that he'd know. He hadn't tried to contact us once in 5 years. Set up the meeting, I decided. 2 days later, I walked into my old home. The grand foyer that had once intimidated me now seemed shabby, the marble floors scuffed, the crystal chandelier dusty. Margaret and Jack sat in a formal living room, both looking aged beyond the 5 years that had passed. "Sarah." Margaret rushed forward, arms open, but stopped when my security team stepped in. We've missed you so much." Jack couldn't even meet my eyes. You look good." "Success does that," I replied coolly, sitting down. "Unlike bankruptcy, which is why you're here." "Please," Margaret's voice quivered, "we need help. The restaurants are failing, we're about to lose everything." "Like how I lost everything?" I interrupted. "When you threw your pregnant daughter-in-law out in the rain?" "We were wrong," she wailed. "Those texts really were from your brother. We found out too late. We tried to find you." "No," I corrected her. "You tried to find me after my company was featured in Forbes. After ServSmart became a $100 million success. Not when Sophie was born. Not on her 1st birthday. Not when she started school." Jack finally spoke up. "Sophie, she's brilliant. No thanks to you." I pulled out a folder. "Here's what's going to happen. Chen International Holdings owns all your debt. You have 2 choices." Their eyes locked onto the papers as I continued. "Option 1, we foreclose immediately. You lose everything. Option 2, you sign everything over to me. The house, the restaurants, everything. In exchange, you get jobs." "Jobs?" Margaret looked confused. "Yes, entry-level positions at ServSmart. You'll learn our system from the ground up. Starting salary is $30,000 a year. Take it or leave it." "That's blackmail," Jack protested. "No," Diana spoke from the doorway, making them jump. "That's business. Something you both should learn about." In the end, they signed. What choice did they have? The next day, Margaret started her new job as a receptionist at ServSmart's local office. Jack became a junior data entry clerk. The woman who had once ruled her restaurant empire with an iron fist now answered my phones. The son who had chosen his mother's lies over his pregnant wife now spent his days inputting numbers into the very system he'd once rejected. But the real justice came 3 months later. "Mommy, who's that lady?" Sophie asked during our office's Bring Your Child to Work day. She was pointing at Margaret, who was watching us with tears in her eyes. "Just another employee, sweetheart," I replied loud enough to carry. "Come on, let's go to Mommy's office and work on your coding project." As we walked away, I heard Margaret's muffled sob. She'd lost not just her wealth and status, but any chance of knowing her granddaughter. Just like they tried to take everything from me, they'd ended up losing everything themselves. Mrs. Chen had been right about karma. The following week, I donated the mansion to a charity that helps pregnant women in crisis. The restaurants were renovated and reopened as training facilities for underprivileged youth interested in technology and hospitality. Margaret and Jack watched it all from their tiny rented apartments, powerless. Sometimes during board meetings, I catch Margaret staring at the large family photo on my wall. Sophie and me with Diana and the Chens, all of us laughing during our last vacation. She sees what she could have had if she'd chosen love over greed, truth over manipulation. But as Diana always says, success isn't just about making money. It's about proving them wrong by doing right. And watching my daughter grow up strong, loved, and free from toxic influence. That's the sweetest revenge of all. The Fairmont Grand was the most prestigious hotel in Boston, and my mother-in-law never let me forget that I didn't belong there. Margaret Sterling, the Queen of Hospitality as the society pages called her, had built her empire from a single inherited hotel into a chain of 15 luxury properties, and she hated that her precious son Andrew had married someone like me. From a farm, of all places, she'd mutter whenever I walked into a room, "Probably doesn't know the difference between Egyptian cotton and polyester blend. If only she knew I put myself through Cornell's hotel management school by working 3 jobs. If only she knew about the business degree gathering dust while I tried to prove myself worthy of the Sterling name." But Margaret didn't care about degrees or experience. She cared about bloodlines and social connections. The Fairmont Grand has hosted presidents and royalty, she reminded me daily. We can't have someone with rural sensibilities representing us. So instead of the management position I was qualified for, I worked as a maid to learn the business from the ground up, Margaret claimed, her perfect smile never reaching her eyes. Andrew, my husband of 6 months, weakly supported his mother's decision. "It's temporary, Emily," he'd say, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Mother knows best when it comes to the hotel business." I loved Andrew, but his spine had been replaced with jelly years ago when it came to Margaret. That particular morning started like any other. I was changing linens in the presidential suite when Margaret burst in with her entourage of executives. They were showing potential investors around, and I became invisible, just another servant in their world. "The Fairmont Grand represents old money elegance," Margaret was saying, gesturing grandly. "We maintain certain standards that other hotels have abandoned. Our guests expect proper breeding in every aspect of service." I kept my head down, efficiently tucking hospital corners just like my grandmother had taught me. Grandma Rose had run our family's small country inn for 40 years. "Hospitality isn't about fancy labels," she always said. "It's about making people feel at home." I missed her fiercely in moments like these. "Oh," Margaret's voice dripped with disdain, finally acknowledging my presence. "This is my daughter-in-law. Emily dear, please demonstrate for our guests how we fold the towels. Show them what you learn on the farm." The investors chuckled politely. I straightened up, meeting Margaret's eyes as I perfectly executed the hotel's signature lotus fold. One I'd actually created during my internship at the Four Seasons. "Adequate," Margaret sniffed, though a bit rustic in technique. That evening, Margaret called the family meeting. The Sterlings gathered in her private office on the top floor. Andrew, his sister Victoria, his father George, who mostly stayed quiet and drank scotch, and me. "I've made a decision," Margaret announced, sitting behind her massive mahogany desk. "About Emily's position here." My heart lifted slightly, maybe finally. "She clearly needs more basic training," Margaret continued. "Starting tomorrow, she'll be transferred to laundry services. Perhaps sorting linens will help her understand quality." Victoria snickered. Andrew studied his shoes. "I have a master's degree in hospitality management," I said quietly. "I graduated top of my class." "Dear," Margaret's smile was arctic, "degrees are for people who can't inherit properly. Now, about the charity gala next week. Victoria, you'll be coordinating with the planners." Actually, a new voice interrupted. "I believe Emily will be handling that." We all turned to see an elderly man in an impeccable suit standing in the doorway. He carried a leather briefcase that looked older than me. "Harold?" Margaret's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. "What are you doing here? The quarterly legal review isn't until next month." Harold Jenkins, the hotel's longtime lawyer, walked in like he owned the place. "I'm here about Rose Montgomery's estate." My heart stopped. My grandmother. "Yes," Harold nodded. "I was her lawyer too, you see. Have been for 40 years. Interesting woman, your grandmother. Very strategic." Margaret waved a manicured hand dismissively. I fail to see what some country inn proprietor has to do with everything, Harold interrupted, opening his briefcase. You see, 30 years ago, Rose Montgomery purchased a significant number of shares in Sterling Hotels through a holding company called Homestead Hospitality. The room went very, very quiet. That's impossible, Margaret whispered. The only major shareholders are listed through shell companies and holding firms. Yes, Harold nodded. Your father-in-law was quite clever that way. Needed capital during the expansion in the 90s, sold shares to various investors, including Rose Montgomery. He laid a stack of documents on Margaret's desk. With her passing last month, those shares transferred to her sole heir, along with some other interesting documents regarding the original ownership of the Fairmont Grand itself. My hands started shaking. Grandma Rose had never said a word. What original ownership? Margaret snapped, rifling through the papers. Harold's smile reminded me of a shark. It seems the Fairmont Grand wasn't actually inherited by your family, Margaret. It was purchased from the Montgomery family, with certain conditions in the contract about future ownership stakes. No, Margaret breathed, face growing pale as she read. Yes, Harold continued. And now, with Rose's shares transferring to Emily, combined with those conditional clauses, well, let's just say there's going to be some changes in management structure. The room erupted in chaos. Victoria started shouting about family legacy. George poured another scotch. Andrew actually looked up from his shoes. But I sat quietly, remembering all the times Grandma Rose had asked about my life at the Fairmont Grand. All the times she'd listened to Margaret's cruelty with that knowing gleam in her eye. Sometimes she told me just before she died, you have to let people underestimate you long enough for them to show their true colors. Then you can decide if they deserve to be part of your success. I picked up one of the documents, reading the share percentages, and I smiled. Harold, I said calmly, I believe we need to call an emergency board meeting. First thing tomorrow. No, Margaret stood up, her designer suit crackling with tension. I forbid it. This is my hotel. My company. Actually, I stood too, feeling Grandma Rose's strength flowing through me. I believe you'll find it's mine. And things are about to change around here. Margaret's face turned an interesting shade of purple. Andrew, are you going to let her do this to our family? But Andrew was still staring at the documents, particularly the ones showing how his mother had been systematically diluting his own shares for years. I think, he said slowly, we should all get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. I walked out of that office with my head high, Harold falling into step beside me. Your grandmother, he said quietly, was very proud of you. She said you had the perfect combination of kindness and steel in your spine. Said you make this place feel like home again. Home. Yes, that's exactly what the Fairmont Grand needed. I took the service elevator down to the laundry room, my last trip as a maid. There was work to be done, and tomorrow would be a very interesting day indeed. I arrived at the Fairmont Grand early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen over Boston's skyline. The night manager did a double take when I walked through the grand lobby in a tailored suit instead of my maid's uniform. Good morning, James, I said warmly. He'd always been kind to me, sneaking me coffee during my long shifts. Could you please make sure the Jefferson boardroom is ready? We're having an emergency meeting at 8. Of course, Miss Sterling, he stammered, then caught himself. I mean Mrs. Montgomery Sterling. I smiled. Emily is fine. We're all family here. The board members started arriving at 7:45. Most I recognized from my days cleaning their offices, though they'd never noticed me. Margaret swept in at 7:59, wearing what I recognized as her battle armor, a blood-red channel suit and pearls the size of marbles. This is ridiculous, she announced to the room. My daughter-in-law is having some sort of mental break. Clearly the pressure of hotel life has been too much for her. Rural sensibilities. Harold cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Sterling, if you'll take your seat, we have some rather important business to discuss. The next hour was a masterclass in legal precision. Harold methodically laid out the ownership structure of Sterling Hotels, revealing how my grandmother had quietly accumulated shares over 3 decades. Combined with the original sale contract's conditions, I now controlled 51% of the company. Impossible. Margaret slammed her hand on the mahogany table. That farm woman couldn't have afforded. That farm woman. I interrupted quietly, turned a struggling country inn into the highest-rated boutique hotel in New England. She put herself through business school at night while raising 2 kids alone. And she taught me everything she knew about real hospitality. I stood up, placing my own stack of papers on the table. Now let's discuss the company's performance over the last 5 years. Our occupancy rates have dropped 15%. Customer satisfaction scores are at an all-time low. Staff turnover is triple the industry standard. The board members shifted uncomfortably. They knew the numbers were bad. You've been so focused on appearance, I continued, that you've forgotten what hospitality really means. It's not about Egyptian cotton or designer uniforms. It's about making people feel welcome, guests and employees alike. I outlined my plan: improved staff benefits, investment in training, a complete overhaul of our corporate culture. We're going to make the Fairmont Grand feel like home again, for everyone. This is absurd, Margaret spat. Andrew, say something. Andrew had been unusually quiet until then. He stood slowly, straightening his tie. Actually, Mother, I've been looking at Emily's proposals. They make sense. Our best reviews consistently mention our staff's warmth and dedication when they stick around long enough to build relationships with guests. Margaret's face went from red to white. Traitor, she hissed. No, Andrew's voice was firm. I'm finally being loyal to the right things. Emily's right. We've lost our way. The vote was quick and decisive. I was confirmed as CEO with Andrew as COO. Margaret was offered a position as honorary chairwoman, a title with no actual power. You'll regret this, she snarled, gathering her things. This company will collapse under your farmhand management. I watched her storm out, then turned to the board. Now let's talk about our employees. The next 6 months were intense. I worked harder than ever, but this time on my own terms. We raised wages, introduced profit sharing, and created an education assistance program. Every executive, including me, spent time working alongside housekeeping, maintenance, and kitchen staff. Slowly, things began to change. Employee turnover dropped. Guest satisfaction scores rose. Our restaurants began winning awards again. Margaret, meanwhile, launched a smear campaign telling anyone who would listen that I was destroying her family's legacy. But the numbers spoke for themselves. By the end of the first year, profits were up 20%, and we've been voted best place to work in hospitality by 3 different publications. The real test came during the holiday season. The Fairmont Grand's Christmas Eve party was legendary in Boston society circles. This year, I made some changes. Instead of the usual celebrity chef, our own kitchen staff designed the menu, showcasing their diverse talents. Instead of hired carolers, we had an employee choir. And instead of restricting staff to working, we invited them to bring their families. The grand ballroom buzzed with genuine joy. Housekeepers danced with hedge fund managers. Line cooks shared recipes with socialites. Children of executives played with children of bellhops. That's when Margaret made her final stand. She burst in wearing last year's designer dress, clearly tipsy. Look what she's done, she announced to the crowd. Turned our sophisticated establishment into a common workers' holiday party. The room fell silent. I started to speak, but Andrew beat me to it. Mother, he said clearly, look around. Everyone is happy. The hotel is thriving. Emily hasn't destroyed our legacy, she's made it better. By turning it into a charity house, Margaret sneered. No, came a deep voice. By turning it back into what it was always meant to be. Harold stepped forward, holding an old photograph. In it, a much younger Margaret stood with her father-in-law, Andrew's grandfather, in front of the hotel. Your father-in-law, Harold said quietly, started as a bellhop here when it was owned by the Montgomerys. Rose's father gave him a chance, promoted him, mentored him. That's why he made sure Rose could buy shares later, to honor that legacy of opportunity. Margaret stared at the photo, something crumbling in her perfect facade. You've forgotten, I said gently, that true luxury isn't about excluding people. It's about making everyone feel special. She left quietly after that. Last I heard, she'd moved to Palm Beach. A year later, we opened our first new property, the Rose Montgomery Inn at the Fairmont Grand, a boutique hotel within a hotel, offering the warm, personal service my grandmother was famous for at luxury scale. The original inn back home, we kept it exactly as it was, down to the handmade quilts on every bed. I still go there sometimes to remind myself where I came from. Andrew and I are stronger than ever. Turns out he has a spine of steel when he's not being manipulated. He runs operations while I handle strategy, and we make a great team. Last week, I made my final peace offering to Margaret. I offered her a job, not as a figurehead, but as a genuine employee. Start in housekeeping, I suggested. Learn the business from the ground up, like you once made me do. She didn't accept, of course. But her silence was better than her previous attacks. Yesterday, I found a young woman crying in the staff room. She'd been berated by a wealthy guest and was sure she'd be fired. Come with me, I said, helping her up. I took her to my office, still the same one Margaret once ruled from. But now the walls hold different photos. Staff celebrations, guest thank you notes, the original inn where I grew up. Let me tell you a story, I said, about my grandmother and what she taught me about hospitality. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making things better than they ever were before. And somewhere I know Grandma Rose is smiling.
Hi, I'm Sarah Martinez, and this is the story of how my mother-in-law's attempt to destroy my career accidentally launched me into the tech industry's spotlight. For 10 years, I lived in the shadow of my husband's perfect family. The Andersons were the epitome of traditional success: doctors, lawyers, and business executives who measured worth by degrees from prestigious universities and country club memberships. I was the odd one out, the self-taught programmer who preferred coding late into the night over attending their lavish social gatherings. When will you get a real job? My mother-in-law, Margaret, would ask during our mandatory Sunday dinners. Programming is for young men in Silicon Valley, dear. Not for a woman your age. My husband, David, a successful corporate lawyer, would just smile awkwardly and change the subject. He never understood my passion for coding, but he accepted it as my hobby, as his family called it. What they didn't know was that for the past decade, I had been developing something revolutionary. It started as a simple idea during my time teaching coding to underprivileged kids at the local community center. I noticed how difficult it was for them to grasp complex programming concepts using traditional methods. So I began developing an AI-powered educational platform that could adapt to each student's learning style, using gaming elements to teach everything from basic coding to advanced algorithms. I called it CodeMind. Every night, after my teaching job, I would work on my project. The core AI engine took 5 years to perfect. The educational modules took another 3. The gaming elements and user interface took 2 more years. It wasn't just code. It was my life's work, representing thousands of hours of research, testing, and refinement. I kept everything on my personal computer and an external hard drive, both in my home office. Yes, I should have had cloud backups, but I was paranoid about my ideas being stolen before I could patent them. The irony of that decision still haunts me. Last month, during one of her surprise visits, Margaret decided to help by cleaning my home office while I was teaching at the community center. When I returned home, something felt off. My computer had been moved, papers rearranged, and my external hard drive was missing. "Oh, that old thing," Margaret said when I frantically asked about it. It was just gathering dust, so I deleted everything and threw it in the donation box. "You should thank me. Your office looks much more presentable now." My world stopped. "You? What?" I whispered, feeling the room spin. "Mom was just trying to help," David said, looking up from his phone. "You've been wasting too much time on those computer games anyway. Maybe this is a sign to focus on something more productive." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Now you can focus on starting a family. That's what a woman your age should be thinking about." I stood there, trembling, as 10 years of work vanished in an instant. The AI engine, the educational modules, the gaming elements, everything was gone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type as I checked my computer. She had somehow managed to delete everything there too, probably thinking she was organizing my files. It's just some computer games, Margaret laughed, patting my shoulder condescendingly. No need to get so upset. Come, I made your favorite cake. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I walked quietly to my car and drove to the one place I knew I could think clearly, the community center where I taught coding. What Margaret didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I had finally submitted CodeMind for patent review. What she didn't know was that I had sent a demonstration video to several major tech companies. What she didn't know was that I had received an email that morning from Microsoft's head of educational technology. As I sat in my empty classroom, surrounded by the computers where my students learned to code, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my patent attorney. The second was to a data recovery specialist I knew from my teaching days. And the third was to a number I never expected to use, given to me just that morning in a confidential email. "Hello, this is Sarah Martinez," I said quietly into the phone. "Yes, I received your email about CodeMind. No, I'm afraid I can't send you the current build, but I think you'll be very interested in what happened to it. How soon can we meet?" The next 3 days would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire Anderson family and their understanding of what a real job looks like. Margaret wanted me to focus on something more productive. Fine. She thought programming was just for young men in Silicon Valley. Perfect. She believed she had destroyed my computer games. Oh, she had no idea what she had actually done. By the time Microsoft's CEO walked into our living room 3 days later, the Andersons would learn exactly what they had tried to destroy and what it would cost them. The next 3 days were a blur of activity that the Andersons completely misinterpreted. While Margaret smugly told her country club friends how she'd finally helped me break my computer game addiction, I was setting everything in motion. The data recovery specialist, Jin, worked miracles. "Deleted doesn't mean gone," he said, surrounded by equipment in his cramped office. "Your mother-in-law may have cleared the drives, but the base architecture is still there. We just need time." Time was something I had very little of. Microsoft's team was flying in to see the demonstration I'd promised them, but sometimes pressure creates diamonds. For 72 hours, I barely slept. Jin recovered about 60% of the code, enough to rebuild the core AI engine. My students from the community center, many now successful programmers themselves, came together in an incredible show of support. We worked in shifts, reconstructing modules, rewriting algorithms, piecing together years of work in days. "You taught us never to give up," said Maria, one of my first students, now a senior developer at Google. "We're not letting you give up either." The morning Microsoft was due to arrive, I finally went home to change. David and Margaret were having breakfast, discussing my breakdown over my lost game files. "I've scheduled her for an appointment with Dr. Peterson," Margaret was saying, stirring her tea. "He's an excellent therapist. This obsession with computers isn't healthy." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly, pouring myself coffee. "But you both should be here at 2 p.m. We're having company." "Oh," Margaret perked up. "Finally joining one of my charity committees?" I smiled. Something like that. At exactly 2 p.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up outside our house. David, who had stayed home out of concern for my mental state. Watched in confusion as Microsoft's CEO, Sarah Thompson, walked up our driveway, followed by her executive team. "Mrs. Martinez," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "We're very excited about this demonstration. Though I must admit, your email about recent events intrigued me even more than the original proposal." Margaret nearly dropped her teacup. "I led everyone to my home office, now restored to its proper state. The recovered and rebuilt CodeMind was ready to go. But first, I had something to say. Before we begin, I addressed the room. I want to thank my mother-in-law, Margaret. 3 days ago, she deleted my entire project, thinking it was just computer games. She taught me a valuable lesson about backing up data and about family." Margaret's face went pale. David started to say something, but Sarah Thompson's presence made him reconsider. "What you're about to see," I continued, "is an AI-powered educational platform that adapts to each student's learning style. It turns complex programming concepts into interactive games. We've tested it with over 500 students at community centers across the city. The results have been extraordinary. For the next hour, I demonstrated CodeMind. The Microsoft team watched as the AI adjusted its teaching style in real time, as students' avatars solved increasingly complex coding challenges through game-like interfaces. I showed them the data: 80% improvement in learning retention, 90% student engagement rate, and a 70% increase in girls and minorities pursuing further programming education. "This is revolutionary," Sarah Thompson said finally. "Exactly what we've been looking for in our educational division. Mrs. Martinez, we'd like to acquire CodeMind for $50 million, with you heading the development team as Chief Innovation Officer." The silence in the room was deafening. "$50 million?" Margaret whispered. "Actually," I said, "I had something else in mind. I'd like to keep majority ownership. Instead of an acquisition, I'm proposing a partnership. Microsoft's distribution network and resources combined with my team's innovation. We keep developing. You help us reach every student who wants to learn coding, regardless of their background." Sarah Thompson smiled. $70 million for 40%. You retain control and become a Microsoft partner. And we fund coding education centers in underserved communities. "Deal," I said. As contracts were being discussed, Margaret tried to backpedal. "Darling, I had no idea. I was just trying to help. You know I've always supported your career." "Save it," I said quietly. "But don't worry. I'm opening a coding education center right next to your country club. Free classes for everyone. And guess what? They're all going to be playing my computer games." The story spread through tech circles like wildfire. The woman whose mother-in-law deleted her life's work, only to have it rise from the ashes stronger than ever. Microsoft's stock rose 3% the day our partnership was announced. David moved out 3 months later, finally realizing we wanted very different things in life. Margaret still shows up at tech events, trying to claim credit for inspiring my success. I let her. Success, I've learned, is the best revenge. CodeMind is now used in schools and community centers worldwide. Every time I see a young girl realize she can code, every time I watch a student from a tough neighborhood discover their potential, I think about those 3 desperate days when everything seemed lost. Sometimes, people try to destroy what they don't understand, but they forget that programmers are really good at one thing: building something better from the crashes. Last week, I received an invitation to give the commencement speech at Margaret's alma mater. The topic? Women in Tech. breaking barriers and breaking free. I accepted, of course. After all, I have quite a story to tell about how sometimes the best code comes from the worst crashes, and how the delete key isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better program. As I write this from my new office overlooking Seattle, I can't help but smile. On my desk sits a frame with lines of code, the first program I ever wrote. Next to it stands an award for Most Innovative Educational Technology of the Year. And beside that, a small sign that reads, Error 404, Glass Ceiling Not Found. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead and bringing others with you. That's a program worth running. I never thought my sister's wedding would be the day everything changed. The day I discovered who my family really was. The day I learned the truth about my Aunt Catherine's fortune. The morning started like any other wedding day. Chaos, excitement, and my sister Amanda barking orders at everyone. I was just the younger sister, relegated to handling minor tasks, while Amanda sparkled in her designer wedding dress that cost more than my yearly salary as a kindergarten teacher. Sarah, where are the welcome bags for the VIP guests? Amanda snapped, adjusting her veil for the 100th time. And please tell me you're not wearing those shoes to my wedding. I looked down at my sensible heels, the nicest ones I owned. These are what I have, Amanda. They're perfectly fine. She rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd become all too familiar with over the years. This is why Aunt Catherine always preferred me, you know. You just don't understand class. The mention of Aunt Catherine made my heart ache. She passed away 3 months ago, and I still wasn't over it. Unlike the rest of my status-obsessed family, Aunt Catherine had been different. She lived modestly in her small cottage, tended her garden, and always had time to listen. While my parents and Amanda chased social connections and luxury brands, Aunt Catherine taught me about kindness, hard work, and finding joy in simple things. Don't start with Aunt Catherine again, Amanda warned. She was just a weird old lady who chose to live like a pauper despite her trust fund. Thank God she left everything to charity like she always said she would. Can you imagine if she'd left her money to you? You probably wasted on your students, or something equally ridiculous. I bit my tongue, remembering all the afternoons I'd spent with Aunt Catherine in her garden, learning about different herbs and flowers while Amanda was off at country clubs and spa days. My sister never understood why I'd waste time with our eccentric aunt. The wedding ceremony was set to begin in an hour at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the most expensive venue in the city. Amanda had made sure everything was perfect, from the imported flowers to the Michelin-starred catering. I was adjusting some place cards at the reception when an elderly gentleman in an impeccable suit approached me. "Miss Sarah Bennett?" he asked, his voice formal but kind. "Yes, that's me." He pulled an envelope from his briefcase. "I'm Harold Winchester, your Aunt Catherine's attorney. She left strict instructions that this letter was to be delivered to you precisely 3 months after her passing, and specifically on your sister's wedding day." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. It was heavy, sealed with wax, in an old-fashioned way that was so typically Aunt Catherine. But before I could open it, Amanda's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Sarah, what are you doing? The ceremony starts in 45 minutes, and..." She stopped short, seeing the envelope in my hands. "What's that?" "It's from Aunt Catherine," I said quietly. "Her lawyer just delivered it." Amanda's perfectly made-up face twisted. Oh God, not more drama from that old woman. She's still causing problems even from the grave. Just throw it away, Sarah. This is my day. Our parents, attracted by the commotion, hurried over. What's going on? Mom demanded, her surgeon's trained eye taking in the scene. Aunt Catherine left a letter for Sarah, Amanda said, her voice dripping with disdain. To be delivered, TODA of all days. Dad, never one for sentiment when it interfered with social obligations, checked his Rolex. Sarah, put that away. We have important guests arriving. The governor and his wife will be here any minute. But for once in my life, I didn't comply. Something about the weight of that envelope, the timing of its delivery, made me stand my ground. I'm opening it, I said firmly. Don't you dare. Amanda grabbed for the envelope, but I stepped back. You're not ruining my wedding with whatever crazy final words that poor old woman left you. The word poor struck me like a slap. How dare they? How dare they dismiss Aunt Catherine, who'd shown more love and wisdom than any of them? With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and opened the envelope. Several documents fell out, along with a letter in Aunt Catherine's elegant handwriting. As I read, the world seemed to stop spinning. My dearest Sarah, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and your sister is about to marry the investment banker she thinks will give her the life of luxury she's always wanted. But there are some things you need to know. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Aunt Catherine hadn't been living modestly because of a small trust fund. She'd been the secret CEO of Montgomery Industries, a global technology and real estate empire worth billions. The cottage, the garden, the simple life, it had all been by choice. While your sister and parents saw only my simple cottage, the letter continued, they never bothered to look deeper, to understand that true wealth isn't about showing off. You, my dear Sarah, understood that. You saw me for who I was, not what I owned. That's why I'm leaving everything to you. The documents confirmed it. Aunt Catherine had left me her entire estate. The company, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios. All of it, worth approximately $89 million. What does it say? Amanda demanded, her voice shrill. Sarah, what did that crazy old woman write? I looked up at my family, my sister in her designer wedding dress, my parents in their expensive clothes, all of them looking down at me with contempt barely hidden behind their impatience. Aunt Catherine wasn't poor, I said quietly. She was the CEO of Montgomery Industries, and she left everything to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's face went from red to white. Mom's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Dad started stammering about family obligations and sharing wealth. But I wasn't listening anymore. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse. Then I took out my phone and called for a car. Where are you going? Amanda shrieked. You can't leave. I'm about to get married. We need to discuss this. I turned to her, feeling stronger than I ever had before. No, Amanda. You made it clear this is your day. So celebrate it. I have some things to take care of. As I walked out of the Grand Plaza Hotel, I could hear Amanda's screams behind me. But they didn't matter anymore. In my purse was a small key Aunt Catherine had included with the letter, the key to her cottage. But it wasn't just a cottage anymore. It was the beginning of my new life. Mr. Winchester was waiting by the hotel entrance. There's a car ready, Miss Bennett. And the board of directors is expecting you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Your aunt spoke very highly of you. I nodded, thinking of all those afternoons in the garden, Aunt Catherine hadn't just been teaching me about herbs and flowers. She'd been teaching me about life, about business, about being strong without being cruel. As the car pulled away from the hotel, my phone exploded with messages from Amanda and my parents. I turned it off. They'd had years to show me love and respect. Now they had to live with their choices. The car headed toward Aunt Catherine's cottage, my cottage now. And somehow, I knew this was just the beginning of the story. The next morning felt surreal as I walked into the towering Montgomery Industries headquarters. The security guard smiled warmly. "Good morning, Miss Bennett. Mr. Winchester is waiting for you in the penthouse office." My aunt's office, my office now, took up the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, but what caught my eye was the small herb garden tucked in one corner. Even here, Aunt Catherine had kept her connection to simple things. "Your aunt spent every morning tending those herbs," Mr. Winchester said, following my gaze. She said it kept her grounded, reminded her what really matters. Before we could begin reviewing the company documents, my phone buzzed. I had turned it back on to find 47 missed calls and over 100 messages. Now, Amanda was calling again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How dare you?" She screamed. "You ruined my wedding. Half the guests left after your dramatic exit. The governor's wife was asking questions about Aunt Catherine and Montgomery Industries. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" "I'm sorry your wedding didn't go as planned," I said calmly, channeling Aunt Catherine's strength. "But I'm not sorry for opening that letter. We're family." Amanda's voice suddenly turned sweet. "We need to discuss this inheritance as a family. Daddy's already talking to his lawyers. You can't possibly handle a company this size. You're a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake." Mr. Winchester, who'd been pretending not to listen, handed me a stack of papers. The top document made me smile. "Actually, Amanda, I can. Aunt Catherine spent the last 5 years secretly training me. All those weekends I spent at her cottage. We weren't just gardening. She was teaching me about business, investments, leadership. She documented everything." There was a long silence. Then Amanda's true colors showed again. "You conniving little snake. You manipulated her, turned her against us. We're going to contest this will, and when we win, you'll be sorry." I ended the call and turned to Mr. Winchester. "They're going to contest the will." He smiled. "Your aunt anticipated that. Would you like to see what else was in that envelope you haven't opened yet?" The remaining documents were devastating. Evidence of every time my family had tried to manipulate Aunt Catherine for money. Amanda's secret credit card debt. My parents' failed investment schemes. Most damning of all, proof that they'd tried to have Aunt Catherine declared mentally incompetent 2 years ago to seize control of her assets. "She kept everything," Mr. Winchester explained. "Every email, every recorded conversation, every legal document. She wanted you protected." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. While my family filed their lawsuit, I immersed myself in learning the company. The board of directors, who'd all known about my secret training, supported me completely. Aunt Catherine's executive assistant, Maria, became my right hand, helping me navigate the corporate world. My family's lawsuit fell apart spectacularly. Their lawyers quit when presented with the evidence of their previous attempts to seize Aunt Catherine's assets. The judge was particularly unimpressed by Amanda's tearful performance about family loyalty, especially after seeing the recordings of her mocking Aunt Catherine's pathetic lifestyle. But the final straw came during a settlement meeting 1 month after the wedding. My family arrived with a new lawyer clearly expecting to negotiate. Instead, they found themselves facing the board of directors and a presentation of their own financial misdeeds. You've been using Montgomery Industries' subsidiary companies to secure loans and credit lines, I explained, watching their faces pale. Aunt Catherine allowed it because she believed in giving family chances. That ends today. You can't do this, Dad sputtered. We're your parents. Parents who haven't called me once without mentioning money since the wedding, I replied. You have two choices. Drop the lawsuit and pay back everything you owe, or I'll press charges for fraud. Mom burst into tears. But Amanda's wedding put us in debt. We had to maintain appearances. A wedding you didn't even invite Aunt Catherine to. I reminded them. Though now I understand why. You were afraid she'd show up in her gardening clothes and embarrass you in front of your society friends. In the end, they signed the papers dropping the lawsuit. Amanda stormed out, screaming about betrayal. Mom couldn't look me in the eye. Dad tried one last time to talk about family obligations, but fell silent when Mr. Winchester started pulling out more evidence files. 6 months later, Montgomery Industries was thriving under my leadership. I'd launched a new charitable foundation in Aunt Catherine's name, providing scholarships to underprivileged students and funding community gardens in urban areas. The herb garden in my office had expanded, and I spent every morning tending it, just like Aunt Catherine had. I kept her cottage exactly as it was, spending weekends there to remind myself of what really matters. The corporate world was exciting, but true happiness came from staying grounded, just as Aunt Catherine had taught me. The last I heard, Amanda's marriage was already in trouble. Apparently, her husband wasn't as wealthy as she thought, and their lavish lifestyle was built on debt. My parents had downsized, selling their mansion to pay back what they owed. They sent Christmas cards, full of hints about reconciliation, which I filed away with the rest of the evidence. One quiet evening, as I sat in Aunt Catherine's cottage garden watching the sunset, I found an old diary of hers. The last entry made me cry. My dearest Sarah, you think I've been teaching you about herbs and flowers, but I've been teaching you about life. In a world obsessed with showing off wealth, you've learned the value of simplicity. In a family obsessed with status, you've stayed true to yourself. You're ready now. Ready to lead? Ready to show that true power comes from kindness, not cruelty. The garden will always remind you. The strongest plants aren't the showiest ones, but the ones with the deepest roots. I looked around at the thriving garden, at the empire I now commanded, and smiled. Aunt Catherine had given me more than just wealth. She'd given me wisdom. And that was worth more than all the millions in the world. The cottage doorbell rang. It was Maria, bringing the latest company reports. But mixed in with the paperwork was a newspaper, Amanda on the front page, her perfect life crumbling as her husband's financial schemes came to light. I set it aside without reading it. I had more important things to do. There were herbs to tend, a company to run, and people to help. Just as Aunt Catherine had taught me. After all, that's what real family does.
Hi, I'm Rachel Chin, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who understand you the least. For 15 years, I built a technology empire from my garage, but apparently that wasn't enough for my perfect family. You see, in the Chin family, education was everything. My older brother Michael was the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect SAT scores, and a full ride to Harvard Business School. I was different. Numbers spoke to me differently. While Michael memorized textbooks, I was taking computers apart, learning to code, and dreaming of building something revolutionary. Rachel, you're wasting your potential, Mom would say, shaking her head as I worked on computers in our garage instead of applying to colleges. Look at your brother, already preparing for his MBA, and you're just tinkering. The tinkering they dismissed, it became Chentech Solutions, now valued at $100 million. But let me start from the beginning. 15 years ago, while Michael was starting his first year at Harvard, I dropped out of community college. The day I told my parents, "You'd think I committed a crime." Dad, a respected professor at Stanford, couldn't even look at me. Mom cried for weeks. Michael, home for spring break, just smirked. "Well, sis, I guess someone has to be the family disappointment," he said, straightening his Harvard sweater. "Don't worry, when I'm running a Fortune 500 company, I'll give you a job in the mailroom." That night, in my tiny garage workspace, surrounded by circuit boards and half-finished prototypes, I made a promise to myself. I would succeed, not by following their path, but by creating my own. The first few years were brutal. While Michael posted photos from glamorous MBA networking events, I was sleeping on a futon in my one-room office, living on ramen noodles and coffee. But I had something they couldn't see, a vision. I'd identified a massive gap in the cybersecurity market. While big companies were focusing on complex, expensive solutions, small businesses were left vulnerable. I developed Security Shield, a simple but powerful security suite that small businesses could actually afford and understand. The first version was rough, but it worked. Word spread. One small business became 10, then 100. By year 3, we had our first $1 million contract. Did my family notice? Sure, but not in the way you'd expect. "Cute little business you've got there, Ratch," Michael said during Thanksgiving dinner that year. "But you really should consider getting a proper education. You can't build a real company without proper credentials." Mom nodded eagerly. "It's not too late to go back to school, honey. Michael could help you apply to some good business schools." I just smiled and focused on my turkey. Let them think what they wanted. I was too busy scaling my company to argue. The next decade flew by. Chentech Solutions expanded globally. We developed new products, acquired smaller companies, and became a leader in small business cybersecurity. Our client list grew to include some Fortune 500 companies. Ironic, considering Michael's old taunt. Speaking of Michael, his career was also advancing. He climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm, making partner by 35. Every family gathering became a showcase for his achievements. Michael just closed a $50 million deal. Michael's been featured in Business Weekly. Michael's giving a keynote at Harvard. My success. It was always qualified. Rachel's company is doing, well, considering. The considering part always hung in the air. Considering she's a dropout. Considering she has no formal training. Considering she's not Michael. Then came last week, Michael's promotion party. He'd been named CEO of his consulting firm's tech division, and Mom and Dad threw a lavish celebration at the Ritz-Carlton. The who's who of Silicon Valley was there, including many of my own clients and competitors. Not that my parents knew that. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress that Mom immediately criticized. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort? This is an important night for your brother." The evening proceeded as expected. A parade of speeches praising Michael's brilliance, his credentials, his potential. Then Michael clinked his glass for the big announcement. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, flashing his perfect smile. "As many of you know, I've just been named CEO of our technology division. But that's not the only exciting news." He paused for effect, his eyes finding mine across the room. "I'm pleased to announce that we'll be expanding aggressively into the small business cybersecurity market. In fact," his smile turned predatory, "I'm hoping to acquire my sister's little company as our first move. It's time for Chentech Solutions to have real, qualified leadership." The room erupted in murmurs. I sat frozen as Michael continued. "Let's be honest, in today's market, you need proper credentials to compete. My sister's done adequately, considering her limitations, but it's time for Chentech to evolve." "Rachel," he turned to face me directly, "as your brother, I'm offering you a graceful exit. Let the professionals take over before your lack of education ruins everything you've built." I looked at Dad, who was beaming with pride at Michael's business acumen. Mom was already gushing to her friends about how wonderful it would be to have both children at the same company. The room waited for my response. Michael's smirk said he expected me to graciously accept, to finally admit that he was right all along. Instead, I stood up slowly, smoothed my inadequate dress, and walked to the podium. "Thank you for the interesting offer, Michael," I said quietly. "I'll have my response ready first thing tomorrow morning." Then I walked out, leaving behind the whispers and stares. In my car, I pulled out my phone and began typing emails. It was going to be a long night, but by morning I'd learn exactly what a dropout could do. Little did they know, tomorrow would change everything. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Chentech's headquarters at 6 a.m., hours before our usual start time. As I walked through the quiet offices, I touched the sleek glass walls and modern workstations. Everything I built from nothing while my family was busy doubting me. At precisely 9 a.m., the elevator doors opened. Michael strode in, followed by Dad and two men in expensive suits, presumably his company's lawyers. His triumphant smile faltered slightly when he saw me sitting calmly at the conference room table. "Rachel," he said, straightening his custom-made tie. "I'm glad you're here. These are our attorneys. They've prepared the acquisition paperwork. I think you'll find our offer very generous, considering my limitations." I finished for him, smiling. "Please sit down. I have some documents of my own to share." They settled into the leather chairs, Michael already reaching for what he assumed were resignation papers. Instead, I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's main screen. "Before we discuss your offer, there are a few things you should know about my little company." I began pulling up the first document. "This is Chentech's current valuation, $100 million, as verified by 3 independent firms last month." Michael's smirk wavered. "That's impossible. Our research showed." "Your research," I cut him off, "was based on public records that are intentionally incomplete. You see, while you were collecting degrees, I was collecting patents. Chentech holds over 200 proprietary security algorithms. The visible company you tried to acquire? That's just the tip of the iceberg." I clicked to the next slide. "These are our client lists. Notice anything interesting?" Dad leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. His face paled as he read the names, including Michael's own consulting firm. "That's right," I continued. "Your company's entire cybersecurity infrastructure runs on our systems. Has for years. In fact, I pulled up another document, that $50 million deal you're so proud of, Michael. The client chose your firm specifically because you promised them Chentech's security suite." Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. But that's impossible." "I would have known, would you?" I asked softly. "Did you ever actually look into who developed the security systems you've been selling? Or did you just assume, like always, that anything I touched couldn't possibly be important?" The lawyers were frantically flipping through their papers, realizing their due diligence had missed something massive. I wasn't done yet. "And here's the most interesting part," I said, displaying the final document. "Remember that graceful exit you offered me? Well, I have a counter-proposal." I slid folders across the table to each of them. "Chentech just acquired your consulting firm's entire tech division. The board approved it last night, unanimously. They were particularly impressed by our new quantum encryption technology, something your due diligence also missed." Michael practically ripped open the folder, his hands shaking. "This is a joke. The board would never." "The board that consists mainly of Chentech clients?" I asked innocently. "The same board that depends on our security systems to protect billions in assets. That board?" Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. One of the lawyers had already pulled out his phone, presumably confirming my claims. "So here's what's going to happen." I continued, my voice steady. "You have 2 options, Michael. Option 1, you resign from the tech division, effective immediately. You'll receive a generous severance package and a glowing recommendation for any non-competing industry. And option 2, he whispered, his arrogance finally cracking. Option 2, I release the records of how your division has been taking credit for Chentech innovations for years. I'm sure Harvard Business Review would love that story. Ivy League CEO caught passing off sister's work as his own." The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, I could see employees arriving, watching the scene with curious eyes. "You wouldn't," Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Last night you called me unqualified, inadequate, and limited. You tried to steal my company in front of everyone we know. That's not family, Michael. That's just bad business." Dad finally found his voice. Rachel, surely we can discuss this. Your brother didn't mean. He meant every word. I cut him off. Just like you meant it every time you dismissed my work as tinkering. Just like Mom meant it every time she suggested my success was just luck. I stood up, smoothing my dress. The same inadequate one from last night. The acquisition papers are legally binding. The press release goes out in an hour. Your choice, Michael. Quiet retirement or public scandal. 20 minutes later, I watched from my office window as Michael stormed out of the building, Dad hurrying after him. The lawyers stayed behind to work out the details of his resignation. That evening, Mom called, crying about how I'd destroyed Michael's career. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I focused on the email I just received. Harvard Business School wanted me to give their commencement speech next spring. The topic? Innovation without limits, success beyond traditional paths. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning what I'd say. After all, I had quite a story to tell. The next year brought changes none of them expected. Chentech's value tripled after we went public. Michael found a job in real estate, far from tech. Dad retired, finally understanding that credentials don't always equal competence. We still see each other at holidays, maintaining a careful distance that masks wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember Michael's smirk, Dad's dismissal, Mom's constant doubts, and I remember that respect is earned, not granted by degrees. These days, when I speak at tech conferences, I often catch whispers. That's Rachel Chen, the dropout goo. They never finish the sentence, but they don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Michael's old consulting firm's annual retreat. The topic? Recognizing innovation. Looking beyond traditional metrics. I accepted with a smile, remembering the night they thought a dropout couldn't possibly build something worthwhile. As I write this from my office overlooking Silicon Valley, I'm reminded of something my first mentor told me. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. She was right, but sometimes, just sometimes, doing both feels pretty good. The company continues to grow, pushing boundaries and breaking new ground. But more importantly, I've found peace with my path. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about soaring so high, they can't help but see their own limitations. After all, not all dropouts are created equal, and not all success stories follow the expected path. Sometimes the biggest achievements come from those who dare to write their own rules. And as for Michael's Harvard MBA, it looks great on his wall, right next to the real estate license he had to get after trying to steal the wrong little company from the wrong, unqualified sister. Hi, I'm Sofia Martinez, and this is the story of how my in-laws learned that appearances can be dangerously deceiving. Sometimes the person you look down on today might own your tomorrow. A waitress. You married a waitress. My mother-in-law's voice could have frozen hell itself. She stood in her marble-floored foyer, designer pearls clutched in manicured fingers, staring at her son Michael as if he just confessed to a crime. It was supposed to be a happy announcement. Michael and I had been married for 6 months, keeping it quiet while he finished his MBA. Now, with his graduation approaching, we'd finally come to share our joy with his family. I should have known better. The Martinez family didn't share joy. They wielded it like a weapon. It's not what you think, Mother, Michael started, his hand tightening around mine. Sophia is amazing. She is a gold digger, Richard Martinez, my father-in-law, cut in. He hadn't even looked up from his phone. Really, Michael? I expected better judgment from a Harvard Business School graduate. The mansion's crystal chandeliers sparkled above us, each prism reflecting my growing discomfort. I'd worn my best dress for this meeting, but next to Victoria Martinez's Channel suit and Richard's bespoke clothing, I might as well have been in rags. Mr. Martinez, I began keeping my voice steady. I understand your concern, but did we give you permission to speak? Victoria's perfectly lined eyes narrowed. Michael, how could you do this to us? To the family name? To Martinez Enterprises? Ah, yes, Martinez Enterprises, the family's precious commercial real estate empire. 3 generations of carefully cultivated wealth and social connections, all apparently threatened by one waitress from the wrong side of town. She probably got pregnant on purpose, Richard muttered, finally looking up. Is that it? Are you trapped by some baby? Father, Michael's face reddened. That's enough. Sophia and I love each other. We're married, and you need to accept that. Victoria's laugh could have cut diamonds. Accept it? Darling, do you know what our friends will say? The Vanderbilt's son just married a neurosurgeon. The Chang's daughter married a state senator, and our Harvard-educated son brings home a waitress. She spat the last word like poison. I squeezed Michael's hand, remembering our late-night conversations about his family's expectations. He'd warned me they were elitist, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Mother, father, Michael's voice grew stronger. Sophia works at Giovanni's to help her aunt who owns it. She's smart, hardworking, and— Spare us the romance novel, Richard interrupted. He turned to me, eyes cold. How much? I blinked. Excuse me? To walk away, name your price. Whatever he promised you, I'll double it. The room went silent except for Victoria's satisfied smirk. She'd probably thought this was the moment the gold digger would reveal her true colors. I don't want your money, Mr. Martinez. Everyone wants money, dear, Victoria purred. Especially people like you. Shall we say 5 million? Tax-free, of course. Just sign some papers and disappear. Michael exploded. This is insane. I'm not letting you buy off my wife. Wife? Victoria scoffed. For now, but trust me, dear, this marriage won't last. Quality finds its own level, and she waved a dismissive hand at me, is definitely not Martinez quality. I thought of the documents in my office safe, of the meetings I had last week, of the plans already in motion. If they only knew who really wasn't Martinez quality. I should check on dinner, Victoria announced. Michael, come help me. We need to discuss this privately. She grabbed his arm, practically dragging him toward the kitchen despite his protests. Left alone with Richard, I waited for the next attack. He didn't disappoint. Listen carefully, he leaned forward, voice low. Martinez Enterprises is about to close the biggest deal in our history. We're acquiring Pacific Heights properties next month. I won't let some waitress scandal tarnish our reputation during negotiations. I kept my face carefully neutral, even as satisfaction bloomed in my chest. That must be an important deal. $10 billion. He smiled coldly. More money than you could imagine. So take the $5 million and go. Trust me, it's the best offer you'll ever get. From the kitchen, I could hear Michael arguing with his mother. She's my wife. You can't just throw money at her and make her disappear. Oh, darling, Victoria's voice dripped honey-coated venom. Watch us. I stood up smoothly, straightening my modest dress. Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Martinez. I called toward the kitchen. Thank you for this lovely evening. I should go. Michael rushed back in. Sophia, wait. Don't let them. It's okay, love. I kissed his cheek. I'll see you at home. Your parents and I just need a little time to adjust to each other. Victoria appeared in the doorway, triumphant. Yes, dear, run along. And do think about our offer. $5 million is very generous for someone of your background. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Martinez. About Pacific Heights properties, you might want to delay that announcement. His face darkened. How do you know about the announcement? Just a suggestion. I smiled. From a simple waitress. I left them standing in their marble foyer, surrounded by their crystal and wealth, having no idea that their entire world was about to shatter. Because tomorrow morning, the board of Martinez Enterprises would learn something interesting. 3 months ago, through a series of shell companies, I had quietly become their majority shareholder, and I had plans for the family business that would make tonight's dinner seem like a pleasant memory. The next morning, I arrived at Martinez Enterprises headquarters 30 minutes early. The security guard barely glanced at me. Another invisible service worker in a modest dress. Perfect. I took the executive elevator to the top floor, smiling at the memory of Richard Martinez's words. More money than you could imagine. If he bothered to look beyond my waitress uniform, he might have discovered that I'd sold my tech startup for $300 million 2 years ago. But people see what they expect to see. The boardroom was already filling up when I arrived. Victoria Martinez sat near the head of the table, examining her manicure. Richard stood at the front, reviewing his presentation about the Pacific Heights acquisition. Neither looked up when I entered. Excuse me, Victoria finally noticed me. This is a private meeting. The catering staff should use the service entrance. Several board members chuckled. I remained standing, calm and steady. Actually, Mrs. Martinez, I'm exactly where I should be. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table, Richard's usual seat. Shall we begin? Richard finally looked up, his face darkening. What is this nonsense, security? I wouldn't, I said softly, removing a folder from my briefcase. You might want to hear what I have to say first. The boardroom doors opened again. Michael walked in, followed by my lawyers and financial team. Sophia? Michael looked confused. What's going on? Yes, what is going on? Victoria stood up, face flushed. Richard removed this gold-digging waitress immediately. I opened my folder, sliding documents across the polished table. 3 months ago, through a series of carefully structured purchases, Golden Dawn Holdings acquired 52% of Martinez Enterprises shares. As CEO of Golden Dawn Holdings, I am now the majority shareholder of this company. The room erupted in chaos. Richard snatched up the documents, his hands shaking. Impossible. We would have known. All major share purchases have to be approved by the board? I smiled. Yes, you approve them. Remember those small strategic acquisitions your advisors recommended? The ones you rubber stamped without reading because you were so focused on Pacific Heights. Victoria had gone pale, her perfectly manicured hand clutching her pearls. You're lying. You're just a waitress. A waitress who sold her cybersecurity company for $300 million at age 27. I nodded to my team, who began distributing more documents. I spent the last year studying Martinez Enterprises, watching how you operate, how you treat people. The waitress job at my aunt's restaurant was just convenient cover. Michael sank into a chair, staring at me. Why did you tell me? Would you have been able to keep it from them? I asked gently. I needed to see who they really were, without pretense, and they showed me exactly that last night. Richard had finished reading the documents. His face had turned an interesting shade of gray. This is about last night. Fine, 10 million. I'll give you 10 million to walk away. I laughed. Still trying to buy people off, Richard? Look around. I own your company now, but this isn't about money. I stood up, addressing the board. Martinez Enterprises has operated on elitism and exploitation for too long. Small businesses pushed out of their properties, employees treated like servants, a corporate culture of discrimination and harassment. I began my presentation revealing my plans for the company. Ethical investment strategies, community development programs, employee profit sharing. This isn't revenge, I continued. It's renovation. Martinez Enterprises will become something its employees can be proud of, not just its shareholders. You can't do this, Victoria shrieked. We built this company, and now I'm rebuilding it. But don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. I slid 2 more documents across the table. Option 1. You both resign with generous severance packages and non-compete agreements. Option 2. I launch a full audit and ethics investigation, including those interesting overseas accounts you think no one knows about. Richard's face went from gray to white. He knew exactly what an audit would reveal. You have 1 hour to decide, I concluded. Oh, and Victoria, 5 million seems a bit low now, doesn't it? The next hour was tense. Michael alternated between shocked silence and amazed laughter. I can't believe you pulled this off, he kept saying. All those late nights you said you were working at the restaurant. I was working, I smiled. Just not only as a waitress. His parents huddled with their lawyers, occasionally shooting venomous glares our way. Finally, Richard walked over, looking decades older. We'll take the severance, he said quietly, but this isn't over. Actually, it is. I handed him a pen. Sign, and we never have to see each other again. Fight me, and every skeleton in your corporate closet becomes public knowledge. They signed. As security escorted them out, Victoria turned back one last time. We gave you a chance to walk away with dignity, she spat. No, Victoria, you tried to buy what you thought was my dignity, but real dignity isn't for sale. Neither is worth. That's something your money never taught you. After they left, Michael took my hand. I'm sorry about them, about everything they said. Don't be, they showed me exactly who they are. And now they know exactly who I am. The next few months were busy. Martinez Enterprises, renamed Phoenix Holdings, underwent a complete transformation. We implemented all the changes I'd planned, turning a cold corporate giant into a force for community good. Richard and Victoria moved to Europe, their social circles shattered by their very public downfall. Sometimes I hear they've been telling people they sold the company as part of a planned retirement. Let them save face. I know the truth, and so do they. Last week, I visited my aunt's restaurant, put on my waitress apron and served a few tables, just like old times. A customer complained about his soup being too cold. "Sorry it's not to your tastes, sir," I said, smiling as I took it back to the kitchen. Things aren't always what they appear to be. That's the lesson, isn't it? Worth isn't in appearances or bank accounts. It's in who you are when no one's looking, how you treat people when you think they're beneath you. My in-laws thought they were teaching me my place at night at their mansion. They did, just not the place they imagined. As for me, I still keep my waitress uniform hanging in my office, not as a reminder of humility, but as a reminder that true power isn't in making others feel small. It's in knowing your worth, even when others don't.